What is good, everyone? Welcome to this video. I'm Charlie from Conscious Creation, and in this video I would like to share with you more about what the shadow is, and I'm also going to be sharing with you how you can integrate your shadow. I'm going to be sharing with you 3 very powerful ways in which you can do this, and if you start to integrate more of your shadow, you are naturally going to start feeling more positive and therefore attract more preferred experiences to you in your life. When it comes to shadow work, it's something that I have been practicing myself for quite a bit of time now. And I used to be a personal trainer. And one of the clients that I used to train was a psychotherapist. He was much older than me. He was in his 70s. But I remember when we started training together, he sent me many of his articles and we went into a lot of depth about what the shadow is. So I'm going to be sharing with you what I have learned from my own experience and also the information that he has passed down to me as well. What is the shadow? The shadow is basically parts of ourselves that we have suppressed, we haven't acknowledged and accepted, and we have pushed them down into the unconscious part of our mind. So let's say, for example, as you were growing up, you had an angry outburst as a kid, you had a tantrum, you threw your toys out of the pram, and your parents said to you, "Don't do that, that's bad behavior." Now, every time you feel that emotion, such as anger, you have now labeled it as bad because your parents told you that was bad behavior. So every time you now feel that anger arise within you, it can be any emotion, I'm just using anger as an example, is because you have labeled it as bad, you continue to push it down into your unconscious mind. And the thing about these emotions is they don't just simply disappear, is they build up in your body like that of a pressure cooker, and it builds and builds and builds. And this actually builds what is known as a mask or a persona. So if we go out, we socialize, we go to a party, we all put on this mask.
It's party time!
This persona, because we don't want to show people this shadow aspect that we have been taught is unacceptable. And you'll also find as well is when you're always trying to put on this mask, when you're always trying to be someone that you're not, you'll find that your energy is always getting drained. When you get to the point where you can immerse and be yourself fully, is you are able to have and maintain much higher energy levels. But I'm going to share with you how you can actually integrate the shadow and not just simply express those emotions outwardly. The thing about the shadow as well is it always wants to be seen, it wants to be acknowledged. So if we continue to push these parts of our self that we deem as negative down within us, is they are going to find a way to show up in our reality so we can become more aware of the shadow. So let's take that anger again, for example, is because we continue to hold more and more anger within ourselves because we are not integrating it, it builds within our body and we start to put out more of the energy of anger. And because of that, like attracts like. So you are going to attract more circumstances and situations in your life that are going to help you become more aware of this shadow aspect. In this case, this anger that you have suppressed within you. Or let's say as you grew up, you saw your parents have a certain type of relationship. And that's how you now view a romantic relationship. And because that's how you now view a romantic relationship, you are going to attract a relationship that is similar to theirs. And so therefore, you can see in things like your relationships that it's very similar to how you view your parents' relationship. So that could also be a part of your shadow trying to show itself to you. The analogy that I'm going to use here is imagine there's a ship and it's sailing into the sunset. And this is a representation of us sailing into the life that we would prefer to experience when we start to have the things that we want. But the problem is this ship's anchor is embedded in the seabed. And this anchor represents our shadow. So if we don't integrate, if we don't accept these part of ourselves that we have pushed down, no matter how hard we try, we are going to find it very difficult to create the lives that we want. And the truth is we are actually high vibrational beings. We are naturally meant to feel more positive than not. But if we don't accept these parts of our shadow, this is why we are feeling negative most of the time. An example of this would be, let's say you've got a cork, okay, and you pull the cork under the water. You have to work in order to keep that cork under the water. As soon as you release it, as soon as you integrate more of your shadow, you will naturally rise, the cork naturally rises, and you will start to feel more positive. And this is when things like the law of attraction start to work in your favor, because again, like attracts like. And as you naturally start to feel better, your outer world is going to reflect that back to you. I'll give you another example of this, a personal example in my life. When I was a kid, I was diagnosed with ADHD. I was super hyperactive, and many of the things that I would do as a kid were quite dangerous. But as a kid, I wasn't relating to those things as dangerous, because when you are a kid, you don't really have as much fear. But the things I would do is I would climb up a 50 foot up a tree that was going like this in the wind, or I'd climb this high building and try and jump the rooftops, or I'd run across the traffic. And my parents, they had to become more strict with me simply to try and keep me more safe. But as a kid, I was looking at the things that I was doing as a form of expression. I was having fun. So every time I then wanted to express myself or have fun, I looked at it as bad, because I got told that was bad behavior. So for me growing up, I realized that this was one of the aspects of my shadow that I had to release and integrate. And when I started to do that, I started to find my expression started to come back a lot stronger, including things like that of my creativity as well. So the question is, how can we go about and start to integrate these parts of ourselves? So let's say we've got an emotion or something that we have suppressed within us. Trying to express it outwards doesn't actually integrate or neutralize the shadow. All it takes is becoming aware of it. So let's come back to that anger. If we feel that anger within us, we need to remove the label of this is bad. How do we do that? It's all to do with a matter of perception. So I'll give you an example on how we can look at this. So let's say we've got a bench and we've got two people sitting on the bench. We've got a farmer and a cyclist, and it's been a really hot, dry summer. And that afternoon, it suddenly starts to rain very heavily. Now, the farmer is actually really happy about this because he needed this rain for his crops and his farm. So for him, this perspective was, this is good. The cyclist wanted to go for a nice cycle ride that afternoon in the hot sun. So for him, this is bad because he can no longer do this. So his perception is the rain is bad. The factual thing was that it is raining. It was their perspective that either looked at it as good or bad. The same comes to these parts within ourselves, is instead of looking at it as good or bad, in order to integrate it, just see it for what it is and just feel it. And if you can do this, you go through this process of releasing more and more of those shadow aspects within yourself, and you are going to start releasing that anchor from the ship. Now, when you do this shadow work, you are going to the deepest parts of your traumas, of your wounds, of your core beliefs, many things that have happened to you, perhaps in childhood, and that's why it can be so transformational. If you see someone who's done shadow work for an extended period of time, suddenly they're naturally more positive and they start to attract more positive things in their lives. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you 3 very powerful ways that can help you to become more aware of your shadow and therefore integrate it, because awareness is the key with this. The first thing that you can do is you can become aware of your emotional triggers, things that trigger you emotionally. particularly if it's out of proportion to the event. So let's say a person, a situation, or a circumstance triggers you and you overreact massively in comparison to the event. Then you know that that situation is helping you to become more aware of your shadow. So instead of blaming the person or the situation, you just simply integrate it by becoming aware of it and accepting it, taking away that label of this is bad. The second thing that you can do is you can manifest things. If you're not entirely sure what I mean by manifestation, I've made some previous videos about this, but this is basically learning how to bring things into your life through visualizing, creating the feelings in your body as if you already have what you want, and then taking the action steps in your physical reality in order to bring it into your physical world. But let's say you're trying to manifest more abundance or more wealth, but you have a core belief or a part of your shadow that was developed as a child where a parent said to you, money is the root of all evil. Now that is a contrasting belief to you trying to manifest more abundance, and the both of them cannot stay within you. So when you try and manifest more abundance, is that part of your shadow, that core belief needs to rise up to the surface in order to be accepted and integrated and released. So something might happen. So let's say you are trying to manifest this abundance and wealth. Suddenly you might receive a massive bill that you can't pay, and you're like, oh, this is not good. And that will trigger that belief that money is the root of all evil within you. And instead of blaming it or labeling it as bad, you just simply need to accept it, integrate it, and feel it. And as you go through this process, you will integrate that part of your shadow and therefore release it, making it easier for you to then attract and manifest abundance into your life. The third thing that we can do is we can start a new project, some creative endeavor, because whenever we do this, many of our limiting beliefs, parts of our shadow start to rise to the surface. Like for me in my life, when I started making these videos, which wasn't that long ago, is all of these limiting beliefs started to rise to the surface. Do I know what I'm talking about? Would anyone be interested in what I am actually saying? And these are all parts of our shadow. And what a lot of people do is when they start something new and they come to that first limiting belief, is they say, oh, this isn't for me. But we need to see them as stepping stones that will lead us to the place that we actually want to go. So every time we feel that stuff, just remember it's part of the shadow and we can go through this, excuse me, we can go through this process of integrating, accepting, and releasing. So I hope this information has helped you. Thank you for watching. I will put a free reprogramming your subconscious mind meditation below if you wish to give that a go. Apart from that, peace, much love, and take care.